Welcome back to the Audible Angle. I'm Dilly in the hat. We got Herbs, as always, with the glasses. We have our uniforms on early today, so you can identify us. We do have another guest online. It's kind of a new segment for us, brought to you by Bridge Up Brewing, Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. When you drink, always drink local. And I'm making this tagline up. Not only drink local, but when you enter Wisconsin, and especially Door County, you're basically local by default. So go ahead and be local. We got a big matchup coming up in the Stag Bowl. UW River Falls with a miraculous ending to their semifinal match, or game, some people call it in football. We're going to bring in a fellow collegiate athlete, inventor, creator, host of Packers Corner, a podcast currently still above us on the rankings. We have moved out of last place as the worst podcast ever. We moved up 3 spots. And, closing in on Packers Corner, please welcome Griff. This is a political talk show all of a sudden. Griff. It's Griff, just with an F, no T. Christenson, star and former UW River Falls Falcon?
Yeah, you nailed it. Well, that was quite a Freudian slip there. I hope I'm not grifting on the Packers Corner, but we will try our best to keep our nose clean there.
We'll probably get questions in 3 years when we're still on air and pumping out content and be like, these guys must be getting some kind of shady federal funding under the table to keep the lights on, because it ain't ad revenue just yet.
Well, I'm a Minnesota resident, so I think I'll be safe. What, you could look out for you. You are too, Dilly, but...
That's right. There will be no investigation. We can rest assured. Nothing to worry about here. Griff, we're going to go back in time, first of all. How did you end up at River Falls, and what was it like? Give us 1 to 45 minutes on your River Falls journey, and we'll start with that.
Well, this is fun to be on the receiving end of some questions. I just get to hear my dad and Schmitty, talk on the Packers Corner and try and tee them up, but I haven't been on the other side here, which is kind of fun. So yeah, I'd love to take you back. So I actually started out at UW La Crosse. My decision making and where I was going to attend university came down to my good buddy Nick Larson was at La Crosse, so that seemed like a good place to go too. That was about all the thought that went into that. And I did really want to play football in college. I had kind of an abbreviated high school career there. I broke my tibia twice as a senior. I was a real small kid, didn't play as a junior, but I really wanted to play at the collegiate level. And the coach kind of blew me off on a couple different occasions at La Crosse. And I, reached out to the River Falls coaching staff and just wanted a chance to work out with the team and see if I could, cut my teeth there and work my way up. And they were kind of taking anybody at the time at River Falls. So it's very different to where they are now. They were just trying to field a full roster. And so you'll hear in the lead up to this game, a lot of people talk about the 0-10 season for River Falls in 2013. That was my freshman year. That was when I came in. And so to see the coaches, what they've been able to turn around things there, and it's pretty cool. But at the time I ended up at River Falls, I had, 6 generations of family members went there. My great-great-grandmother, I just found a picture of her in the 1915 yearbook at River Falls. So there's a family lineage. But more than anything, they said, hey, we'll give you a chance.
And that was with the current coaching staff. Is that correct?
Yeah. Early days, I think it was, some of the guys that were seniors that last year, I think had played, maybe in the first year for Coach Walker when he took over for Coach O'Grady, was the previous coach.
And then we go to present day. We're going to fast forward and jump around a little bit, obviously, because we want to get a little feel for the whole season.
We'll get to the stuff that matters here, right, with all the success they've been having now.
How much are you attending games? Are you watching it on a stream? I mean, it seemed like you were pretty up to speed on a lot of the action. How many games did you make it to this year?
So I made it to all the playoff games. I stuck it out when it was a high of -2, and somehow Caleb Laha threw for 400 yards. I could barely make it through the game standing on the sideline. But I made all the playoff games, which has been an absolute blast, and we'll get into some of that. And then I attended some of the early games. It was actually interesting to see, how talk about the way that the Falcons have changed over the years, but how they've changed in this year in particular. They came out and played a good Cohawks team from down in Iowa there, but they gave up about 600 yards of offense that game, and they just couldn't stop them. They were fortunate to have this Top Gun offense that kept up that day. But to see where the defense has come now is maybe one of the things that's gone under talked about for this Falcons team, in my opinion. They had a little bit of a tough week last week, or 2 weeks ago here now, against Bay Harvey and Johns Hopkins. But you'll hear all about this Top Gun offense, and they're incredible. They put up a lot of points and a lot of yards. But actually, the guy who was my offensive coordinator, Coach Jacob Wissing, has moved over to the defensive side of the ball, and they've made huge strides on that side of the ball. It'll be interesting to see how they fare against North Central. But I've been boots on the ground a lot in recent weeks here.
What, I guess you're talking about the rest of the year. What happened, as a novice, and we kind of bring up some information. UW Oshkosh, which happens to be, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because now I don't have the schedule up. Was that the lone loss of the year?
Yeah.
For River Falls, and that's a common opponent that I think North Central played them too. Was that before things gelled for the year, or an aberration, or UWO also? I mean, it looks like the WIAC overall is pretty stiff competition.
Well, for sure. I think, if Oshkosh plays in another conference, they might have still been a playoff team this year. Like that's not a bad team. Now, North Central took it to them around that same point in the year, and obviously the Falcons lost that game. I think a big part of it in that game in particular is the Falcons had, I believe, 3 red zone turnovers. I know they threw 2 picks in the end zone, and they had a great drive to go win the game with about a minute to 50 seconds left, and then they just fell apart on the defensive side of the ball and gave a score right back. So it was really a tough game. It was against a common rival in a conference ball game. All those things can go. I don't know if I would say it was an aberration, but it was certainly a point, really a decision point for this team where they were going to go. In all likelihood, if you drop a second game in the WIAC, you're not going to make the playoffs. Now, this year that turned out not to be true. 4 teams made it, but in most years, so you lose that first conference game and you could melt pretty quickly, and they went the other way. A lot of people point to that as the transition point in the season for this team. To me, I think that's true, but I think also what was really interesting was the Whitewater game for these guys. Over the years, going back to even my time there, when Jake Kummer was playing against us for Whitewater, if you remember him as Packer faithful, we had a lot of close games against Whitewater, even when they were winning national championships and we were about bottom feeder in the conference. And, I mean, there were years where we lost one year. We were down 21. They came back. I think this was Caleb Laha was on the team. And then a freshman kicker hit a 49-yarder off the crossbar at the buzzer. We had a couple meltdowns. In this year, I was nervous about that game. If I would have been setting the line, I might have had the Falcons as the underdog. And they came out and they dropped 52 points on Whitewater and just blew them away. I think that was a transitional point for the program. And to be able to do that we know the history of Whitewater and the national championships they have. To me, that stamped that this team was for real and that they had a chance to go to the playoffs. And they've just continued to accelerate from that point.
Well, Griff, I've got a couple of questions that I've scripted. This is one that I haven't, and I'm kind of interested just for my own personal reasoning. I have firsthand knowledge this year of the River Falls facilities out there. I was on the soccer only facility, but you have to walk past the football program or football stadium there to get to the soccer field. My son plays for Platteville, so we were out there for a River Falls game. I came away, just for side note knowledge, with a 2-2 tie. The River Falls soccer team was halfway decent this year. Kind of laid an egg in the WIAC semifinal against us, but that is what it is. When I want to get to, those facilities are pretty solid out there, Griff. That stadium looks new. The athletic facility looks new. Can you give us any peek under the covers on when that came in? Was it there when you were playing? It's got to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the weight room. It's pretty top notch. I mean, that's got to be very good. Not only going to the Stag Bowl is good for recruiting, but that facility in the system there is obviously good for recruiting.
We absolutely. I think that's those two coming together. I think it's an exciting future to look ahead for River Falls too. But you're right, the facilities are top notch, and I think I probably really get to appreciate this because they were not top notch when I started my career there. They kind of had two projects going side by side. They had sort of a renovation of the football stadium, and then shortly after that was the Falcon Center, they call it. That's where they have the health and human performance classes, and they have the hockey's out there, basketball's out there, and the weight room and locker rooms for football and so forth. So when I first got there, they had a pretty nice locker room for a Division III place because you might recall the Kansas City Chiefs used to come in and practice out of that facility. I had a Joe Montana shirt I used to wear, and the gals at the cafeteria used to say, "Oh, Joe was so nice when he came here." They remembered Joe Montana being there, which I thought was pretty cool. Apparently his favorite pizza place in town was Steve's Pizza, so shout out Steve's Pizza.
Potential sponsor, Steve's Pizza.
Yeah, my mother was a waitress at Steve's Pizza once upon a time, so the lineage runs deep there. But when I was there, the first 2 years, freshman, sophomore year, where is now the parking lot for that whole facility? That was our practice field. There was no backing to the football stadium. The Falcon Center was there, but it was not is pleasing to look at for sure. And we were playing on a grass field. So to see it come where it is now, a beautiful turf, awesome looking venue, and really a great game day atmosphere. I got to say, getting into the recent history here for the semifinal game we just saw against Johns Hopkins, what a cool game day environment. Certainly the way that one ended was a blast. I think that was the most fun I've ever had at a live sporting event ever. It was just a phenomenal place to be. But they've really created a cool game day atmosphere for the Division III level.
And we'll get to that last play because, I mean, obviously a lot of our fans, our listeners probably saw it on the top 10,
Sure.
on ESPN top 10, but I'd like to hear your view on that too, but we'll save that towards the end of the show today. What I do want to talk about, and you touched on the intro here, you touched a little bit about that Top Gun offense. I'm not familiar with what that is, and I'd like to get some explanation on what that is, but I do want to talk about immediately is kind of the four jokers that run around on the flanks out there who the stud quarterback is throwing to. And it's an interesting, I listened to a interview just recently from coach there. I believe it's Coach Walker.
Matt Walker.
That was talking about how he's pulled together these four wide receivers, these skill players and the wide receiver who are catching it. And it's interesting for our listeners to know that these aren't your prototypical, 4-year football players, high school football players. These are guys that have come from different backgrounds. I believe there's one kid from Arizona. Obviously, I think he's probably played football his whole life. But the second guy that he talked about was actually a junior college kid, junior hockey's kid. So he was playing junior hockey, and when you play juniors hockey, that's kind of your future, right? Like you're playing in the high school, you're traveling around, and that's one of the wide receivers at River Falls. The other guy was a highly touted in the Division III ranks for basketball, and he changed sports and decided to go football, and he's catching the ball for him. And then the last guy was actually a quarterback in high school, and now he's transitioned to a wide receiver role. I think that's really interesting, and I want your perspective on how do you get a bunch of guys that are obviously athletes, and that's one thing. In my history playing soccer, Division I soccer, there was a lot of good soccer players and not a lot of good athletes. Now my son plays for UW Platteville soccer in the Division III level. There's a ton of good athletes that are good at soccer. And there's a difference there. So what I see here is very much a theme that you've got four guys from four different backgrounds that are obviously athletes. But talk to me about how that cohesion comes in and how coach has got them playing at a high level and putting up yards.
Yeah, so I think a big part of it goes to the design of this Top Gun offense, and Joe Matheson is the offensive coordinator, and he really is a guru. I think what he's doing, and I don't know the X's and O's. I definitely have my fan hat on. I didn't matriculate to the coaching ranks or anything like that, so I certainly have a fan perspective. But what they're doing seems to be very unique, and it's been effective. But I think it's attractive as a wide receiver to have the caliber of guys that they do and have so many of them, because they even have guys, getting down into the 5'6" range on the depth chart that could be really successful wide receivers at this level at other places. And they're able to keep those guys involved enough with the style of play, with the amount of plays that they run. And so I think that's a big part. It's this basketball on grass, getting everybody involved and touching the football. Otherwise, these guys wouldn't stick around. I mean, that's just the reality of it. At that position, you're so dependent on the way that the offense functions. So I think that's a big one. I didn't realize the junior hockey story, but I did know Ben Wazlowski played a little quarterback. I do know Blake Rohrer. He's the one who had the big catch to win the game against Johns Hopkins, came in as a basketball player, and had a cool story with how he connected with the quarterback, Caleb Laha, at a local bar in town at Tarnation Tavern. They call those two the Tarnation Tandem. And so he ended up showing Caleb his huddle highlights, and Caleb said, "We better get you out to 7-on-7," and that's how he found his way onto the team. But I think the biggest thing is these guys they got a bunch of dudes out there that create a heck of a lot of separation, and this has been notable to me against this playoff competition. I think this team is good all across the board, and they got the best player in college football in Caleb Laha at this level. But the separation these wide receivers have been generating in the playoffs, part of it's schematic, but part of it's, like you said, they just got a bunch of dudes out there that are good athletes, period. And fortunately, they can catch the ball and run around after they catch it a little bit too.
That's great. That's a great story. I like the Tarnation Tavern story. That's pretty fantastic.
Well, they've won me over. It was Mavs back in my day, and that was a favorite watering hole. So it had a pang of pain there when I saw the name had changed, as these things tend to happen. But they've totally won me over now with bringing the quarterback and the basketball and now wide receiver into their fold there. And they have a great T-shirt up there they've been selling with the Tarnation Tandem. So it's a cool deal.
But you touched a little bit on Caleb, and I think he's a fun story. I know that he's been successsul. Is this his third year, Griff, or is this his fourth year? Did he come back for his fourth
I believe
year?
this is his third year getting significant time at quarterback. He's a Winona State guy. He played a little slot down there, and then he transferred to River Falls, and he got hurt in the 2024 season pretty early on and decided to come back as a medical redshirt. So he's a fifth-year senior. But I believe I'd have to look at I think this is his fourth if you count last year, but his third full season at the helm for the Falcons.
Yeah, and Coach talks about this in the interview that I listened to. He talked about the decision, which was basically a year ago, for Caleb to come back and play and come back for this season, right? So it was last winter, and he told the coaching staff that he was going to come back. And what's fun to know about that is Coach is very high on him, that he wasn't interested in the personal accolades. He wasn't coming back for himself. He was coming back, and he told Coach last year, 1 year ago, he's coming back to win a national title. And for him to come to fruition, and it's not easy to win a national title in any sport at any level. I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3, or junior college. It's tough to win a national championship. But I want your perspective on probably seeing more than one game, which a lot of our listeners and a lot of people will only see one game on the national television on ESPN, that Stag Bowl. But what's the maturation of Caleb at the quarterback position that you can kind of see as a fan or as a follower of the Falcons football that's really made the difference in your mind, that has put him into he broke records, Division III records this year, and that's a short list, obviously, and to be at the top of that list. Talk to me about what you've seen from him outside looking in.
Yeah, from the outsider perspective, and I'm sure that the coaches and the insiders have a different perspective on this, but from the outside, he's been doing this for a long time. Everything that he's doing this year, this isn't new. He's been, tearing up the best competition in the Division III level in the WIAC for a number of years now. It's just they've had the team to surround him with, and they've won a couple games that were won or played different, and they would have been in the playoffs previously here. So they've been on the cusp of doing something like this. I think the execution down the stretch in this tight game that they had at Johns Hopkins was really a cool moment, because they haven't been in a ton of games like that this year. They've had a fairly significant margin of victory in most of their games. So if you wanted to point to maturation and what that might look like in a national championship, I think you look at the Oshkosh game where he led them on a drive to go win the game when they needed it. Unfortunately, the defense didn't step up there. and then to win the game against Johns Hopkins, if they have a drive and they need him at the end, I think he's shown that he can do that. But I mean, you can't overstate what this kid has done this year. He's got a chance. I think he's 269 yards away from breaking Joe Burrow's record for total offense in a season for any level at college football. And it would be surprising if he didn't do that. And like you said, he's not in this for the accolades. He wants to win football games. So you point towards a chance to get a 14th win in a season. I think that's probably what he's most excited about.
This story in itself, Griff, is a fun story, and I'm going to go right from Coach Walker. In his perspective, he took over. This is his 15th season, and you were part of a lot of those seasons. I think you came in early in his career. I looked through 2010 to 2019. There wasn't a lot of winning as a River Falls football player, but after that COVID year in 2020 is really when things kind of came around. I will give credit to the athletic department and the athletic director, the president a little bit there, that they stuck with Coach. Because 15 years at a Division III level, when you're not winning and you're sticking money in like they have, to stick with a guy, obviously he's a likable fella just from hearing him talk. So I'm sure he's very likable within the department. But boy, this is something to celebrate for everybody that's kind of the little guy, that this is possible if you kind of stick it out, and then it's going to finally come to fruition after 15 seasons, getting to the pinnacle here. Hopefully they get over the hump, but that's got to be satisfactory or satisfying for Coach and his staff to finally get there.
Well, yeah, I agree. At a lot of places, you look at the Division I level or something, you don't get the time to turn a program around like this. And I think that's what River Falls needed was time to get the right caliber of athletes, to develop these facilities that they have, to bring in a guy like Joe Matheson at OC. And Coach Walker was clearly the right guy to do all this. I think, you said he's a likable guy. That comes off pretty quickly. That's how he is every day. He cares about his players, and it's just a right fit for him in this town. That's how this town operates in River Falls. It really is kind of a throwback, type of a feel there about community and these sorts of things. So I think that the town is lucky to have him, and he's fortunate at this level that he was able to have the time that he needed to build a program like this. But I think it's going to have a lot of staying power. You build things up the right way, and they've done that now. I think the future is really, really bright. But does this happen to at a Division I school? I think you probably don't get that sort of time.
I'm going to bring it back forward now to the semifinal game, and I might be piecing some of it together from text messages or hearsay. I was going to say hearsay or heresy. But it's going to be a two-part question. First of all, is it true your bravery faltered a little bit and you were in a cozy press box type facility watching that semifinal game? And did you end up with any insider perspective on that final touchdown play, that perhaps there was a little, I wouldn't say shenanigans, but a little perhaps out tricking themselves on down and distance and game situation at the end of the game?
So there's a couple things you're getting into there. You're crossing events, actually. So I made it up into the press box for the St. John's game. I was fortunate to be up there with my dad and a bunch of alums and some of those faculty and administrators that stuck it out with Coach Walker here. And so a big shout out to all the guys up there and in that spot. But they were kind enough to host us up there. But that game was, what I did witness up there was Jalen Reed had a back, so not to be confused with Jaden Reed for the Packers here, but he looked like him. He had a long touchdown and then transitioned into a back handspring to a backflip to put the nail in the coffin against St. John. So that was a cool moment to take in. Even a cooler moment was a couple weeks down the road, and maybe we'll have to break this down and get into the X's and O's because I think it's worth talking about, but was against Johns Hopkins when they had that walk-off. Now, before that, the other play you were alluding to was the fourth down controversy where the Falcons decided to go for it, and Coach Walker did elaborate on this. I saw there was some confusion. It was a loss of down. I think they had an illegal touching on a fourth down or on third down late in the fourth quarter. And it because of the way that the rule was written, it was a loss of down. I think it was an ineligible man because of alignment at the snap, and then that was the guy that the ball was thrown to. I didn't realize that was a rule that was a loss of down. I think it doesn't happen a ton. But the refs correctly notated this, and the sideline didn't figure this out until right before the snap. And clearly, I don't think the quarterback, Caleb, knew that this was a fourth down, is how this play played out, because he would have thrown the ball downfield to try and make an attempt. Coach Walker opted not to take timeout because he thought his guys could go get a fourth down. They're hyper aggressive on offense, and it could have backfired on them pretty easily. They put the Jays in a great position to go win the game in that semifinal, and the defense did step up, which you could juxtapose against the Oshkosh game we were just talking about. So that's kind of play-by-play, but I was still in the stands. I was gutting it out in that Johns Hopkins game. I did not run away to any press boxes late in the year here.
So that was not the final drive. That was earlier in the fourth quarter with the third and fourth down confusion, where perhaps they would not have been. Do you think they would have gone for it anyway if it was fourth down?
Well, so Coach Walker said he figured this out right before the snap, and he said he recognized it with enough time that he could have called timeout. So, I mean, that's a little different than having the whole, if you would have gone for it initially, but, he felt confident enough they could make it. So I think they probably punt there if he knew right from the start. But I don't know exactly what they would have done. And I think it's certainly one you could quit. We would be questioning for years to come if that game didn't end up the way it did. The other one that was questionable was right before the half. They had about 7 seconds. They're on their own 25-yard line, and they opted to throw the ball. It got tipped up and intercepted, and because of the wind and the elements up there, Johns Hopkins ended up missing a field goal. But they had the ball right on their own end, and like I said, they're hyper aggressive. So there'll probably be a couple key plays like that up against North Central in the national championship game, and I expect them to be Dan Campbell times 10 out there.
That's a good lead into what I was going to ask you about here. What do we know about North Central other than, I mean, they're a traditional powerhouse in Division III. If you just go back and look at championship games, they're winning or losing a lot of championship games over the last, 10 years even.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be their 6th straight appearance in the Stag Bowl. They've been going every other year with their wins here, so I think they're hungry to get 2 in a row. But this is a really, I said that the Falcons are well-rounded, but we know their strength is their offense this year. I mean, they have probably the best offense in the country. I think you have to say they do at this level. North Central's a little bit more balanced. They're really good both sides of the ball. They're really balanced in their ability to both run and pass the football. They're highly efficient when they pass the football, whereas the Falcons tend to rely on this high up-tempo sort of off. It gives as many plays as possible, and that they have enough explosive ones mixed in there to make this thing work. North Central just hasn't had a particularly close game all year, and the ones that they have been typically where they kind of take their foot off the gas and somebody comes back late. I think the key area to point out for this game is going to be up front in the trenches. Do the River Falls Falcons, can they muster enough run stops? I think, as big of a homer as I am, I think they're going to have a tough time consistently stopping the run. North Central's got a heck of a running back here. Donovan McNeil, I believe is his name. I watched about 2 plays of him and said, this guy doesn't look like he should be at the Division III level. He looks like a Division II or an FCS running back. He's very quick. And the Falcons just had a really tough time stopping the guys up front in the run game against Johns Hopkins. I think ran for about 160 yards against the Falcons last week. So can they get enough stops? They don't need to stop them every time, but can they get enough? And then you look at the perimeter for North Central. Their quarterback, I believe he's a Division II bounce back, but this is his first year starting for North Central, and he's really gained momentum as the year's gone on. It seems like becoming more of a vocal leader and so forth that way. Is a lot different than having one legitimate big time that we saw a lot of years as Packer fans, where we had Devontae Adams and Geronimo Allison was our number 2 or something like that, and that's a different feel for sure than when you have the Super Bowl run and we got 5 guys out there that can't be stopped. So that's a little bit of a preview. Defense has been, solid for North Central, and I think the most prominent guy there's JP Sullivan. He reminds me of Chris Hovan out there with the eye black and intimidating looking guy. You're going to see him on the telecast for sure in the interior. And he's been able to get after the quarterback and cause a lot of problems for North Central.
I got one question that you led into there, and then Irby, I saw you starting there. We'll go back to you after this one. And this might be more for the next Bridge Up Brewing Keep It Local episode where we celebrate the River Falls victory. But you mentioned, a Division II player bounce back. We've talked about it on the show a little bit with NIL deals and what's happening on collegiate levels and how it all trickles downhill to lower divisions, guys moving up, guys moving down. Has River Falls experienced much of that yet? And as just a fan, and again, a little premature before we get to the celebration episode, but looking ahead as a program that builds and becomes successful, do you get a sense that there's a plan in place, or are they already hyper cognizant of guys, great year, move up? Are they recruiting Division II players down? Is that a thing that you see either for the WIAC at large or at River Falls yet?
Yeah, it's definitely been going on in the WIAC for a period of time. It's the guy that I point to right off the bat would be Jake Kumro. He was from Illinois. That there's been a number of guys certainly over the years. Oftentimes that was sort of focused on the guys closer to the Chicago metro, the Oshkoshes, the Whitewaters, teams, kind of in that portion of the state. I think you're going to continue to see more of that, and from the Falcons as well. They've had a couple. Caleb Laha being the notable one here. We had a guy, Charles Dixon was a SDSU guy, I believe, back in my day, Division I or Division I FCS bounce back. So it's been going on, and that certainly happens. I think Wisconsin's unique at this level of football because we don't have any Division II football. We don't have an FCS school. It is Division III, and honestly, you look at the scholarship landscape. What do they get at the Division II levels? Are the 35, 36 scholarships, I believe? Not the majority of those guys are not on full scholarships at that level. And when you look at the quality education you get and the tuition cost at a Wisconsin school compared to even maybe a half scholarship at some of these other programs, it's a pretty good value proposition to be at a Wisconsin River Falls or something like that. So I think there's going to be more kids where they can even just out recruit these same kids that are being looked at a Division II school, let alone the bounce backs and the transfer portal and all this too. But again, I don't have a ton of the inside baseball on this, but I'm certainly sure that the coaches are aware of that, and they're going to continue to go after each and every guy they can get.
I think that's a good angle to talk and have a little bit of insight on, Griff. I think the group that we're sitting on the call right now with Dilly and myself, and I've got my son who's 19 and been part of the Division I recruiting landscape as well as the Division III recruiting landscape. And there's some similarities and there's some differences. I'm going to tell you that the Division III landscape is kind of like the Wild Wild West. There's some major changes that just recently happened on the Division I recruiting area because of the NIL and some of the changes that they've made on the soccer side, as well as the football side. I believe there were some scholarship changes. Like there just was, I think there's the sizes of the rosters are going down. I'm not sure if that's a football thing or not, but we're talking football today. I'll talk soccer for sure. It has affected the roster sizes, but it's definitely a thing. And we're going to be talking about in future episodes that the best athletes are going Division III, or some of the best athletes are going D3. Obviously, there's money for that top end, that top 5% of college athletes, but there's a big chunk of good athletes that are going to the WIAC. And I just want to take a quick second and get your perspective on how strong the WIAC is. I look at River Falls, and I look at their schedule. They're playing, and they're kind of they're pretty well tested, and I would argue maybe more than North Central as far as the conference goes. If you look at that UW Oshkosh game, they were 15th. They were ranked 15th in the country. The next week they play Platteville, who was 6th in the country at that time. You've got a couple of weeks off. I think Eau Claire snuck into the top 25, but when they played them, they weren't. Then you've got Whitewater, who is number 8. You don't sleep because the next week you're playing number 9 UW La Crosse. So there's 4 top 10 teams in the WIAC alone, and they beat the crap out of each other. And that's got to get you weather tested to a certain degree to get into the tournament, because you're probably not in that first 2 rounds. You probably aren't seeing competition as good as what you saw in the conference.
Yeah, 100%. I think there is a conversation to be had with where would a lot of these WIAC teams stack up, even against Division II opponents. And they used to do back in the day, I think this was in the 90s, they would have the winner of the Northern Sun, the NSIC, play the winner of the WIAC. And the WIAC had a winning record back in the day, which I find to be interesting. Now, I think they're probably not competing at the top end of the conference. There's teams competing for Division II national championships over there in that NSIC conference. But I do think it is really competitive. But at the Division III level, and it's a wide range of that you get there. There's some really talented teams at the top, and there's also a lot of teams where they just aren't that focused on athletics. They're academic institutions, and they kind of field a football team, and that's great. But it's pretty wide. So even with the way that the playoffs were structured for a number of years here, there was maybe even bottom half WIAC teams that would have steamrolled some teams that made the playoffs with the way that it was set up. Now they've instituted what's known as the NPI, and they have a 40-team field, and so for the first year ever, we got 4 WIAC teams in this year, and I really think that should be close to the standard. We should be getting 3 WIAC teams pretty much every year. I'm certainly biased on that, but there's years, and Coach Walker's talked about this last year in particular, where they felt like they could have made a run like they have this year. Even a year ago, they had 3 losses in a really tough conference. So this schedule that they've played this year is not abnormal. It's what they play every year in the conference, and there's top teams in the nation every year. And I think there's 2 things that happen. Sometimes you're right, iron sharpens iron, but when you're playing a 15-game season, injuries can stack up too, and they don't get many halves off in the WIAC season. Even playing against the teams that are maybe bottom half of that conference, you still got to come out and play. And fortunately, River Falls has been able to stay pretty healthy this year. But there's years where that's not the case. So I think they have a unique schedule this year, because not only did they play that WIAC competition, but they played really tough non-conference competition, played 2 additional teams that made the playoff this year. So they're going to, as of Sunday night here, they will have played 10 playoff teams on their schedule, and they've won every game to date so far. And Oshkosh is really a playoff quality team if they don't play in this conference too. So nobody's played a schedule quite like that in the country this year, and so they have a lot of experience going into the deep waters. Whereas North Central, they've blown a lot of people away. So it'd be interesting if this Top Gun offense can turn it into a shootout. Is kind of what I'd be hoping for as a River Falls fan. We get the ball in Caleb Laha's hands at the end of the game. See what happens.
I agree, and friend of the show, real good friend of the show, is former Ripon head coach Ryan Kane. Now he's the athletic director down at Carthage, and he's been in my ear for probably 10 years about how good the WIAC basketball teams are, and I believe that not too far behind and maybe even ahead the WIAC football is as well. And that's probably a good thing for high school kids in Wisconsin, because they're going to play. I mean, when my son went from the Division I level down to Division III to go to Platteville, they were ranked 14th in the country. So it's a different style of game. Don't get me wrong. It's not an FCS type of game at the Division III. So it's a different style, but there's still high-end athletes out there, and we're in very good homes for some of these athletes that are looking to stay with that competition for 4 more years.
Well, and one thing that's maybe changed for the Falcons, I would say here, sorry to cut you off, but is there's definitely a difference in depth when you look at a Division III program versus a Division II or FCS program. I mean, they've got 7-8 guys that can go out there and play at every position. It's not like that at the Division III level, but that's maybe one area where we talked about the depth of the receiving corps for this Falcons team. That is unique, and I think that's probably been a big part of the building up of this program. Wasn't something we had. We didn't have an embarrassment of riches at any position in my day, certainly as a Falcon. So to see the depth that they bring out there is unique for sure.
With your history and your knowledge of the program, and I'm sure you're watching it very closely this year because of your connection being alma mater there at River Falls, did the NCAA get it right, Griff, in your mind? Are the best 2 teams playing on Sunday night at 7 o'clock on ESPN? Are these the 2 best teams in the country this year?
Yeah, I really don't think there's any doubt about that. These are the best 2 teams in Division III college, and it's tough to do in a 40-team playoff field to make it through that gauntlet. Both these teams played a lot of competition on their way to this championship game. But I think there's no doubt. This would actually be kind of a fun year to see a third place game if you were at this level. I think you'd probably have a Bethel versus a Johns Hopkins or John Carroll. I mean, John Carroll's who North Central beat in the semifinal. But if you had something like that for a matchup, it would be interesting this year. But for sure, I don't think there's any doubt about it. They got 1 and 2 this year.
You got a viewing party set up for Sunday night for Packer game, which we're not going to get into today, but man, is that going to be an exciting just fireball of a game. Packers Vikings, everybody, I mean, they might as well just make the practice squads, expand their practice squad rosters and let those guys play at this point. But do you have any plans for the big game?
Yeah, well, funny you should ask. 2 things. One, I think this Falcon run has really helped me, like I said, keep my nose above water with the struggles the Packers have been having. I didn't even flinch when I saw us lose that horrible game to the Bears because I was still riding high off the Falcons' victory against Johns Hopkins, so they couldn't even bring me down. Otherwise, I don't know, I would have been like Schmitty wearing black on the podcast all last week. That said, for this national championship game, yeah, I do have plans. I'm driving to Canton, Ohio. We're going to take it in person at the Hall of Fame, which I've always wanted to see. So we're going to get up early Sunday morning and check out the Hall of Fame. Going to drive in Saturday night and be back Monday and back to the clinic before too long. But hopefully we got a Falcon win in between all that.
Hey, Griff, I appreciate some of the insights.
I lost you here on the audio.
Sorry. Hello. Still there.
Do you still have me, Griff?
You there, Griff?
We lost Griff on the earphones. Could be, looks like it is on his end because we can still hear each other.
Can you guys hear me still?
Yeah,
yes.
we can,
okay.
Griff.
Let me try and switch my headphones here.
Filling up some dead space as Griff tries to get us back here. One of the things I do appreciate, and this is for our next episode that you and I will hit on the Packers, and I'm sure on the Packers corner.
They just switched on me here. I got you now, guys. Sorry about that. Appreciate it. Oh, I would love to have it. And if we can get the answer to him before the playoffs start, that would be great too.
That's the nice part about where I live. I'm very close to 1265, so I'll get it in. That's going to be the next phone call. But I believe the right way to go is to screw him up and tell, just like the River Falls team with the successful plays, we'll tell him it's 4th down when it's 3rd. And then maybe we'll get some decent play calls on this, just like the River Falls guys did. And I think that'll probably work out a little bit better for us. What do you think?
Well, yeah, we heighten the sense of urgency for sure out there, and maybe we need to tell them the wrong score too. Tell them we're down, 14, 21 points, and they'll cut it loose a little bit here. That seems to be when that Packers team has more, success on offense. Maybe what else could be helpful for them? Maybe a little conversation with Joe Matheson on the Top Gun offense. I think he might have a couple things that Coach LaFleur could institute.
If we keep them on the same down, and I felt this kind of all the Jordan Love years, 3rd and short, just play it 3rd and 12. Like, I feel pretty good on 3rd and longer. So just play it like that. They're going to be stopped. If you, especially, and we're not going to get into it, fans, there's time limits on this show because we could go a couple hours on this. But,
all day.
If you're going to bother getting into shotgun formation and spread it out, instead of Irby's favorite play, inside zone, on 3rd and 1 from a spread out formation, just run 10-yard routes. They're not defending it, they're defending, quote, the sticks. So, yeah. And
in all seriousness, this is something that I've heard Joe Matheson talk about with their design on the offense and so forth is really these almost extended downfield RPOs where you do have an option to hand off the football, but they're having things develop downfield, and it's not necessarily always quick hitters. Sometimes it's the quarterback involved in where he can take off and scramble with his own legs, and he's making reads based on coverage, whether he does that or he's going to throw the ball. So yeah, I think there's room for some ingenuity there from Coach LaFleur. When he kind of cooks up something, that's where we see him at his best. He's got a lot of good stuff, but when he gets a little bit too vanilla, it gets frustrating as a fan, and easy to criticize when it's not going well. But at the biggest moments here, I don't know if he's going to come through for us. I'm always worried about those game time decisions from Coach LaFleur. Where he's best is on the chalkboard, in the preseason, to be honest.
Griff, maybe you need to come in and on our regular show here and talk about that, because then we can outnumber Dilly and his over-optimistic view of this Matt LaFleur-led poor offense.
Quick preview of our next episode, which will actually come out before this episode does, because we're going to snug this up closer to the Stag Bowl, so people wake up Saturday probably and start thinking about the Stag Bowl. They'll be able to find this a little easier. But a little preview of our Packer Meltdown show will be, guys, in the NFL, bad teams are good and good teams are bad. And that's just the way. The Rams, Stafford's terrible now. The Bears and Niners have no defense. The Bills can't win in the clutch. It's all over for everybody. So by 2 weeks from now, we'll celebrate the Stag Bowl. We'll celebrate a wild card victory, probably in Chicago. Might as well be Philly. I don't give a shit. Just wherever you put us, we're winning. It's 2010. We got James Starks coming in. It's going to be great, boys.
Is
really
James
interested
Starks
in
Marshawn Lloyd by chance? Do we utter that name on this podcast?
Could be.
I'm interested in getting some predictions here, Dilly, because it's very different than our Packer predictions. I'm because the numbers that I've seen on the schedule are not typical NFL scores, which North should they. But I'm looking forward to hearing some of our predictions here for the game, the big game, North Central versus our friends at River Falls, the Falcons. You want me
And
to
I'll
head
jump
up? Go ahead.
I'll jump in quick, Griff. Before predictions, because you mentioned it earlier, if you were putting a line on the River Falls Whitewater game, you might have had River Falls as the dog. Have you formulated a betting line for North Central and River Falls in the Stag Bowl?
I got to shout out some guys in the D3 level that do really good job, putting together some stuff like this. So I'm kind of live here, seeing if I can tabulate some of that info for you. But to give you my perspective, and I actually watched, it was the lacrosse game with Schmitty, our other attendee of the Packers Corner. I invited him over. We had a little brisket, and we watched, Falcons, Lacrosse, Eagles. And he asked me, he said, what would you set the line at for this game? I said even. And the Falcons won that game 41-7, I believe. So I think I'm a little snake bitten. I have too much of that 2013 0-10 season in me still as a Falcon fan. And so my line is probably pessimistic, but I am going to root with everything I have to overcome that. So that's it. If I was going to set the line, if I was, line it up in Vegas, I think I'd probably have, about a touchdown game. River Falls is the underdog. I'd have, North Central -7.
Well, I'm taking the over.
Well, that'd be interesting. I wonder what the over-under would be. I mean, like I said, I'm going to see if I can pull this up for you guys here. I know Logan Hansen does a lot of work on this, and he actually, based on their season-long metrics and resume analysis and looking at the strength of the Falcons' schedule here, his model that he's produced, which has been pretty accurate throughout the playoffs, setting lines for the Falcons, actually has the Falcons is the favorites, which is interesting to note when the raw computers are used. Falcons have been outperforming his line just about every week on that model.
Now that might be a legitimate freeze on Griff. Oh boy,
that's all right. That's live television.
Well, and I heard enough. Hopefully he comes back in here, but I've heard enough to give my prediction. The computers say UW River Falls Falcons, and if I can find a legal place to place a bet, I'll take the UW River Falls Falcons to win. And going by the scores that these teams have had, I mean, it might be 75-71. But we're going River Falls victory. That's pretty clear. And I'll tone it down a little bit to 42-37. I don't even know how you get to 37, but
yeah, I'm sure there's a way to get there. But I'll tell you what, I'm believing in the local guys, and by local I mean the state of Wisconsin. Let's take River Falls. I'm going to be a little bit tighter. I'm going to say they're going to be down with the last drive with the ball. They're going to be down 4. They're going to have a little magic left from the Johns Hopkins game. They're going to have a little bit left, and they're going to get a 3-point victory, and it's going to be pretty tight as far as scoring. It's 54-51.
And sorry to ask for a clarification here. Is the winning score a touchdown, or is it a last-second field goal?
No, it is a touchdown because they're down 4 with the ball. Yeah, so they'll drive. They'll get another. I would assume it's going to be one of the four wise men, if you will, for keeping it seasonal. Those wide receivers is going to catch it, run a ways, at least 40 plus, and we're going to get the win. We being, I am a Falcons fan now, so we're going to go 54-51.
Irby, we have a lot of fans. We have a lot of listeners. And now,
back. Right.
Welcome back to the program.
With little intermission there.
Yeah, you had to go catch it. You guys started hyperventilating with excitement on your prediction for the game.
Yeah, the technology was just working too good for us. You knew it wasn't going to last.
Griff, I've got a 54-51 victory for the Falcons on a last-second drive, a touchdown to win the game, 54-51 for Falcons. Dilly, if you want to recap your prediction for Griff.
I had a little wider gap, and I believe I had the River Falls Falcons 42, North Central, much smaller, weaker bird, the Cardinal, or the Cardinals, 37. And I couldn't figure out how they got to 37, but that's all they got to is 37. Falcons get to 42.
Yeah, I think this. Yeah, I think this is going to be interesting. As much as I was raving about the job that Coach Wissing has done with this defense over the course of the year, I think they're going to have a tough time stopping North Central. Fortunately, with this Top Gun offense and what they've been able to do, I think North Central is going to have a heck of a tough time stopping the Falcons here as well. So I think you guys are right on with your high score predictions. How high does it go? I think North Central's probably going to control the clock and slow things down at least a little bit. Hopefully the Falcons aren't giving up a bunch of big plays, or that could change quickly and we could get up into the 50-point mark. But I think this is going to be a 42-35 victory for the Falcons on a touchdown, big play, just like we had a week ago. Maybe in that play a week ago, I thought this was interesting. 2 weeks ago here now, actually. I was a hole shot. It was a cover 2 look, which back in my day, it was a pretty common defense. I heard Coach Walker talking about it a little bit. And they said with all these combo coverages and unique, exotic looks they get now, it was a little surprising to just get base cover 2. So it's crazy how much the game has changed that way. But I look for big play down the seam, Lake Roar from Caleb Laha, Tarnation tandem. What more could you ask for?
Nice.
Griff, thanks for your time. Everyone, go watch Packers Corner. It's a weekly show. They got nudity. It's everything. They got everything. It's great. They got toaster threats, and they got your dad who's I kind of wanted to try to, I don't even know if you can get 4 guys on a podcast, but I kind of wanted to bring in your dad because that would probably be a separate episode, just an hour-long history of River Falls football and a very, deliberate explanation of the growth of the program and all of that. Was he an athlete at River Falls? Any other athletes in the family?
Yeah, so I told you, our lineage, we're going back generations here with my great-great-grandmother all the way back to 1915. We've had 3 consecutive athletes, as far as I'm aware. I don't think it goes before that, but my grandfather played basketball for the Falcons, and what's now known as the Don Page Court. Don Page was his coach at the time. My dad was a golfer for the Falcons, and they don't have a golf program anymore. I think there's rumblings. So they just brought back baseball for the Falcons, so maybe someday that's something that could be brought back. We did. Shout out to my dad. He guided us on a victory in the River Falls Falcons charity scramble golf tournament this year, and he didn't miss with the putter, so that was fun to be a part of. Maybe they'll announce that at the national championship game. They'll say something about our scramble championship. And then, I of course played football. So we did have a couple other athletes. And we talk about this Top Gun offense for the Falcons. Back in my dad's day there, I was looking up some history and to find the note on Caleb having a chance to pass Joe Burrow's record. When my dad was there, this was just after him, but the 1984 River Falls Falcons, 83 I believe actually, set the low mark in the history of Division III football for passing yards. They threw for 184 yards on the season. Can you believe that? And they were good too. They were competing for conference championships. They were just a powerhouse running the football. So cool to see how far it's come. But I'm sure he would have plenty of intel for you. And what we'll have to do the same. Get a perspective from Irby and or Dilly. On the Packers Corner would be fun to do.
Appreciate that, Griff.
one last thing, we know Herbs is going to get the message over to LaFleur. We're doing 4th down every play, except for 3rd and short. We're doing 3rd and 12 on 3rd and short. Just make sure you get the link to the episode over to Coach Walker, all the players, and everybody that attended River Falls football this year. And, make sure they subscribe, because we are going to be coming back throughout the year with the Bridge Up Brewing, drink some beer. I don't know. I'm testing taglines for him.
Is Bridge Up Brewing Derek Crumry approved?
Oh yeah. He's been there. I don't know if he's drank all their beers, but he is quite the connoisseur. Aren't they over like 200 breweries? I'm sure it's top 30, top 20. He knows the brewmaster.
He's got to be top 0.01% for, variety of alcohol drink.
Griff, I do expect the Audible Angle foursome to get an invitation to that Falcons. We are quite formidable. We will get at least 9 or 10 under on our scramble, with or without mulligans.
Who's the foursome for the Audible Angle? Who else would you guys bring?
It's pretty high end. We got some guys. We got Druzy, he hails from the Minnesota area. He's a former Phoenix. He did not play on the golf team. He did play on the men's soccer team. And then we got a former state champion wrestler, Jared Baranchek.
And let's be clear here, though. Is that 152 pounds, I think Nick Larson was that at some point.
Yep,
and
he was.
It's a little bit of an aberration, because some people might call it fake state, because it wasn't folk style high school state champion. He went AWOL and went to the freestyle state championship and won there, I believe. I'm surprised that you remember that. Last thing on our golf scramble team, which we'd be happy, we often look for additional scrambles to play in, but this particular one, the DuPie Open in Amory, Wisconsin, one of the funniest things that ever happened was, Herbs and Druzy, soccer players, Jar, a former 152-pound wrestler, and me, technically a skill position collegiate football practicer. We rolled in, and some, 60-year-old lady just straight at us. Well, you guys look like an offensive line. Are you guys from one of the teams around here? What are you? A bunch of offensive tackles? We're like, oh gosh. So
take them when you can get them, Dilly. Take them when you can get them. Yes,
I think she was hitting on us. I think
more or less.
All right, Griff, we'll let you go here, and we'd love to have you back sometime, and hopefully it's as soon as the Stag Bowl after party. And as I was trying to mention, we are going to try to make it a staple to come back. It'll be a lot of Division III sports in Wisconsin, and maybe a little bit of high school sports even when that hits up. Hudson Wrestling. We got an in at Hudson High School Wrestling. Know the coach there. We'll maybe get him on the program too. We got to flex our connections, and that's coming. So
I've got also an inside track of a Hudson All-State soccer player, former teammate of mine. His son is playing out of Hudson, and he's solid. He's a junior, so he's got his senior year coming up. Could maybe get him a shameless plug, get some insight on what's going on in the western part of the state, because that's a conference I don't have much insight on.
Well, maybe he can do a little winter conditioning with the wrestling team.
He may be.
You guys got a heck of a trajectory here, where you said in just a few short days ago you're the worst podcast ever created, and look where you are now.
Look at us now,
man, do.
But no, in all seriousness, we'd love to have you guys out there for the golf scramble. Would be a blast. They do, eightsome, so we could have 2 foursomes out there. The returning champs and you guys could be a blast. I said, Irby, are they going to have any trouble with you in the Platteville connection there? I don't want to get your son in trouble on the soccer pitch.
Oh no, there's not a real big rivalry there for River Falls. We handled them in the tournament, so I think they will be okay. I won't wear any blue and orange. I promise you that. I'll probably just come in green, sport the old alma mater myself, because I'm kind of a transplant in the Platteville area. Quite frankly, I'm just getting to understand and embrace Division III soccer. It's a slow process. We went through one season. We've got 3 more to go, and maybe by the 4th year, I'll actually get my arms around what they're trying to do there.
Well, pleasure to be with you guys. I sure do appreciate it. And like I said, we'll have to get perspective. You can do a 4-person podcast. We did it. We tried it on the Packers Corner. We had Derek on there for a while. It gets to be a lot to do regularly to sort of, get everybody's perspective in there. And all of us love to talk. We know that, but it'd be fun to do.
All right. Take
Thanks,
care,
Griff.
guys. See you soon.
Bye, guys. Go Falcons.